bye week practice Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Players run Friday morning and they have the weekend off, and then we'll get back to work on Alabama. So chance to play some younger players this week, get people healthy, even though that's not a major issue with us this early in the year. So I've said before, not the best time ideally for a bye. Wish it was later, but it is what it is.
Are there any specific players or position groups that you're trying to look at this week when you're evaluating the young guys?
Not necessarily. I mean, maybe, some DBs to because we haven't played many, and receivers as always. Unfortunately, we've not rotated a lot of guys there on the outside. We have this year more on the inside with, 3 slots. So continue to try to find some depth there.
Lane, when you took this job, considering the state the program was in and everything, did you have a schedule in your mind about where you wanted this team to be at certain points? And if so, where are they right now?
I've never thought like that. I've never said, okay, when you take a job, year 2, year 3, year 4, this is where you're going to be. Just like I've never said that during a season. We need to win this many games. We're just always trying to improve, and there's so many variables, especially nowadays with transfers that go into it. And as always, you got to have some luck too and stay healthy. So, if you would have said, hey, whatever rankings mean, because rankings do not mean anything really until the last one. But if you were to say, hey, you guys are ranked wherever we are now, 3 games through the second year, and, the energy, nationally that I feel, when we talk to recruits, I would say we're doing pretty well. But again, the final rankings is what matters from a football standpoint. From a recruiting standpoint, I think, the energy around the program, where it is in kids' minds around the country now versus where it was 2 years ago, was dramatically different.
You mentioned the energy around recruiting. I know the weather didn't help Saturday, but just in broad terms, how was that? I mean, talk a little bit about that energy you're feeling.
Well, I think, it's unfortunate because of the weather. The crowd was, the numbers were they were. Because I think judging off the energy earlier during the walk, it would have been pretty electric in the stadium. So the good thing was recruits and players were able to see that during the walk. It just wasn't the same in the game. But talking to kids that watch the game nationally, they don't really see the crowd. They see the production on the field and whatever, the 60-some points halfway through the third. And so that was good. And I think the first game, the time slot where it was at paid a lot of dividends. Monday night where there's nothing else to watch. Even down at the Bucks game, NFL players on the Bucks and Falcons talking about that game to me, just because so many people are watching it. Any other slot you get on a Saturday, you're sharing it.
Lane, I was wondering, when you took this job, and maybe even when you were considering this job, what did you know about Matt Corral? Were you aware of him? Were you aware that he had the talent that he has?
I did not know that much. I'd heard the name. I knew about the different commitments to different places. I really did not know that much. I watched briefly, right before the interview, some offensive plays or some offensive tape of the guys, especially the young guys, but I did not know very much.
Along those lines, are you surprised, kind of piggybacking off David's question, are you surprised that he is where he is right now from maybe the first few practices that you had with him?
I mean, I wouldn't say surprised. I remember the first time I ever seen him throw and turn into Levy and say that's really special and unique. And because he was just throwing a deep ball like 70 yards, like nothing. So he is extremely arm talented. He shows plays every Saturday that people don't make. And I've said it before, Ole Miss fans, need to appreciate this, why you have it. This is a generational arm talent, that you're going to get spoiled with because not too many people ever are going to make those plays that he's making. And there's a lot on Sundays that start that don't make them.
What was that like Sunday, seeing your dad have his name put in the Ring of Honor or whatever it is that they call it at Tampa?
Yeah, it was really cool, just to be there and worked out with the bye and to be part of that and just to watch it and know how much time and energy he spent in there, sleeping in the office. I mean, I remember him going to work on, he'd go on Monday and not come back, till Thursday, Friday night. So he put a lot of time in there, and you could see it with the players, Sapp and Brooks and Rondé and Allstott and all those guys, their appreciation for him. So it was really cool.
Coach, with the bye this week, obviously you'll be out doing some recruiting, you and your staff. How big is it for you to be able to finally do that after the last 2 years? And then two, there's a proposal to expand the cap to 32 to 35 players. Will that change anything with this class for you? Just how many high school players you'll sign versus if they don't?
Yeah, I don't do very much on things we can't control. So until they tell us it's changed, I don't worry about it. That would change. And the more they raise it, the better it is for high school kids. Like I said, you got hundreds of high school kids not getting scholarships that got them before, because we're all holding spots. And we're basically holding spots to take people that have already used up an initial spot. So, it doesn't take a math major to figure out the high school kids are the ones, getting screwed in this whole thing.
Lane, just curious, when you compare the SEC today to where it was 12 years ago when you got to Tennessee, what do you think kind of contributed to offense going on such an upswing? Was there one or two things you saw, or is it just generally football is trending that way in your mind?
That's a good question because when I do get asked about the SEC back then versus now, I feel like there were great defensive players you played every week and had to scheme around, and there's still that. Now I do feel like there's more offense, and the numbers prove that, like last year, historic offensive numbers in the conference with only conference games. I'm not sure. I think there's more non-traditional offensive coaches calling plays in this conference now. This was notoriously a traditional offensive conference. Guys came in and started changing that, like Hugh Freeze. This was an I formation conference. So I think that's where you see the change. And I think also the best players now come to the SEC. I mean, it was never like this. I mean, California kids didn't come to the SEC. Hawaii kids didn't come to the SEC. Now everybody just comes to the SEC on both sides. So, it's where the best players are.